moved Alderweireld into the midfield, but he kept playing as a center back. So I'm almost happy to see Kirikesh over there because he wants to play the game as a center back. So he's not going to be flying up the flank, and neither is Davis. And I think that it behooves us in this system currently to have two fullbacks who understand that they are defenders first and offensive support second, and not the other way around. With the talent that we have in the midfield, we don't need it. It gives us a little bit of width, but I think that that's why he's playing the Eriksens and the Lennons and the Lamellas out on the wings right now, is because they can give you all the width you need with Kane and Soldado supplying the power on the inside and the accuracy at goal.
Well, look, I think I haven't really thought about it from that context, and it's an interesting discussion. I think that he knows that naturally his technical ability, right, is what's going to keep him in lineups, and to be just fundamentally sound at his core defensive responsibilities is going to be a natural for him, as opposed to trying to be something that he doesn't have the natural talent for. And as I said, I really felt like he progressed through that game, and his performance was very good, and I could tell that he was gaining confidence. And there's something to be said about having different looks on different sides, and Vlad is a completely different player, and as I said, and he has flashes of brilliance, and he has flashes of just sheer lunacy and idiocy. Did you see that one little touch he had, that little side? I don't even know what it's. There's a FIFA move that has a name for it, but where he made a really, really cheeky pass, but that's Vlad. I mean, he's like, we talked about it last week. He's a bit of a gunslinger. He's not a natural right back anyway. Anyway, I worry that he'll be exposed in a big fixture like Chelsea and in an important one. Let's be fair about this. Chelsea is about getting a result at Chelsea is about limiting our mistakes. And when you have a player like Vlad in the lineup, you clearly increase the probability of silly things happening. And to your point about Davies, core sort of fundamental defensive responsibilities, I'd feel a little bit more confident. Ironically, I would never have thought that last week, but his performance today showed that he has fundamentals. And I remember reading that about him at Swansea, because he wasn't the starting left back at Swansea. He played his way in through somebody else's injury, and he kept his job by just playing fundamentally good defensive football.
I almost wonder if it would be worth asking like a Danny Rose to play the right side next week, because he has that speed and can defend against Hazard.
Yeah, but you'd never play an inverted. You'd never play an inverted fullback. I mean, you would never play an inverted.
We did it with Naughton all last year, didn't we? I mean, he's a natural right back that played left back just about the entire year.
Fair play. I don't think that Puck would do that, but we'll see. Yeah, look, there's going to be a bunch of grumbling and probably question marks in terms of the lineup, and this is where everybody needs to mitigate mistakes from the manager in terms of lineup and tactics, and then players and how they go about their business.
And we don't expect any changes up front. We still expect Soldado and Kane to be the mix up there. But what about the midfield? I mean, is it going to be Eriksen, Lennon, Bentaleb, and Mason, or are there any changes to be had there? I mean, do you keep Chadley on the bench? Is he healthy yet? I saw he was on the bench today. So.
Yeah, that's going to be that's just a big question. Period. And how does he matriculate back into this team? I mean, my brother was here from London the last 10 days, and he and I talked about Chadley a lot because he's had so many of our goals, but he hasn't been part of goals that have he hasn't been part of a winning stretch. Like, his goals haven't been part of a winning stretch for us, right?
Yeah.
They've been goals, consolation goals, or goals that have kept us in matches. And look, I'm very thankful for what he's done, and he's been a surprise. But in terms of where I see Puck's system progressing towards, I don't think he's really a natural fit here. So look, I wasn't on board with Bentaleb being in. I thought Lamela was very deserving, and I was proven wrong. We got a good result, and I don't know. I think it all kind of comes down to how he's scouting Chelsea and where he thinks their strengths are and how best we're set up, and that comes from film work, and that comes from what he sees in training, and with what Puck did today, I feel comfortable in leaving that up to him and seeing him through and letting him try to be the manager that we hired him not to be. We hired him because he is. So we'll see.
Yeah. All right. Let me ask you this real quick. Do you wish we had one more week before playing a team like Chelsea?
Oh, of course.
I mean, 'cause, it's like, is this an aberration? Is this real? Or if I touch
I
will it disappear?
I don't think this effort is going to be an aberration. I think these players can look around and pat themselves on the back and say, if we put forth this effort, there are going to be rewards to be had. And so I felt like this was a very validating exercise for our squad today. So yeah, sure, I'd love to have another week to prepare, but I feel about as good as I think I mean, short of playing out of our heads and beating them 4-0. But I actually like the fact that we didn't trounce them, because the last thing we'd ever want to do is think our body odor smells like perfume going into Chelsea away.
Right.
When every result is critical, because we're 2 points off fourth.
Yeah.
So that's as I said, we got some constructive things to take us into Wednesday with. What else we got?
Shout outs, man. You got anything anybody out there you want to grab a hold of around the neck and give them a kiss?
There was a funny tweet that the official Spurs account sent out sometime maybe midweek, sort of pimping StubHub, which was really kind of a shameful thing to do, especially when maybe that speaks to how out of touch the club is, because StubHub is probably the most next to Adebayor, StubHub is probably the most hated thing around White Hart Lane right now, because it is sort of legalizing ticket touting. And so I want to promote a great Twitter feed, which is @Hotspur Tickets. And for American fans, it's kind of commonplace, right? Well, a ticket to a big game, you just go find you could just go find a what do we call them here in the States? A ticket broker, they're called touts in England, and they're hated because they make it really next to impossible or very difficult for real supporters to have affordable access to games. So @Hotspur Tickets promotes buyers and sellers, mostly sellers, to be able to exchange or sell tickets for face value. And I was a beneficiary of that last year when I had the chance to go to the North London Derby. And that service, and it's @Hotspur Tickets, introduced me to a fantastic Spurs family, the Pierce family. I believe they're in Kent. And met this guy, Marco is his name, and he's @M as in Mary, P as in Paul, 10, Marco, and his son, Casey, and I think he's KASEYPP 95. Just great people. We exchanged at the pub, face value, sat and probably spent an hour and a half together. Just they were genuinely surprised that American supporters were mildly knowledgeable and so interested. So if you ever get the chance to go to the lane and don't have tickets through the club or through official channels, use @Hotspur Tickets, because they're really great. So I definitely want to pimp them. I want to prevent Spurs fans from getting screwed, and also it's an honest exchange. You don't have to really worry about whether you're getting fugazi tickets.
That's that's actually a really good thing to note too, because I know that along with that, you have a pretty funny story about that, don't you?
Well, I do. So in 2004, I went with 5 American. Actually, one guy was Canadian. A couple, small handful of guys. It was 3 of us from Dallas and 3 of us from New York, and we all met up. We didn't have tickets, and it was North London Derby. In fact, it was the weekend. I think the weekend that week, Santini quit, and we didn't have tickets. It was freezing cold. It was a bit of a kind of a stag weekend. At least that's kind of how we behaved. And so we got all banged up on Friday night, and it was actually a midday kickoff. Freezing cold. It was so bitterly cold, and I had like this intergalactic hangover. It was just brutal. And so we got up at Seven Sisters and walked all the way down the high street in freezing cold conditions and didn't have tickets. And then we find this fella, and he says, "Need tickets?" I said, "Well, we need 6. We need 6 together." He goes, "Come in here, man." And he brings us in this cafe, and he holds these tickets, and he holds them out, and we look at him, and I'm with this Greek friend of mine, Spurs supporter. I call him the Greek, and he's very suspicious, and he's looking over him. He's like, yeah, everything checks out. And we gave him a king's ransom for these tickets, and as soon as I grabbed them, fuck me if he wasn't out the door. And I go and look at these seats, and it says, away supporters only. And
winning.
So you can imagine the immediate piss taking and winding up I got from my mates. And
I wouldn't know what to think at that point, man. I'd probably be either excited or terrified, and I'm not sure which.
Because I was the ringleader of this, right? I was Mr. Tottenham for the day, and none of these guys had ever been to White Hart Lane, and I'd guaranteed them, a day of a lifetime. And we had to sit. We sat behind the goal, upper level. And if anybody remembers that game back in 2004, it was a brilliant game. It was 5-4. And Nordi Nebet scored in the 37th minute to make it 1-0 in that end. And I shot, and I told these guys, I said, after all the bollocking that I got, I said, look, do not get excited for anything Tottenham or we'll get killed. And we're sitting there with gooners all around us. Nebet scores. And I jump up with my hands up. And then I had to really immediately quickly sit down. But the frightening thing about that match was that we had to walk out with the away supporters. And all of the Spurs fans were surrounding them after losing 5-4 and hurling abuse. And so I said to my mates, rip up your tickets, and just assimilate into the crowd. And we did. And we were saying, we're Yids. And yeah, one of the darkest days of my life.
That's amazing. And that has to happen probably more than we think. Where someone ends up in the away support. It
was karma, because it just look, it was karma. Using ticket touts is just bad karma, and I deserved everything that I got. But we still had a great time. But it was, and arguably we had an even better time because I just got the living piss taken out of me for weeks and weeks and weeks, and rightly so. So yeah, that was my don't use a ticket tout story.
Awesome. Yeah, I have a couple. Obviously Dallas Spurs. That's our supporters network. You know, we're the Yids in America. The Dallas Spurs. At the beginning of the year, we were pushing nearly 100. About the first 3 or 4 matches out there. Slowly started to dip to about 80. And with the later games on a Sunday, kind of miss. We live in a Bible Belt here, so there's a lot of people that have church commitments and things like that, and we fully understand that. But now it's about the same basic, 25 to 30 people every single weekend for these Sunday matches. And now we finally have some Saturday matches coming up, so we're a little interested to see what's going to happen. But
I can watch a game live, finally.
Yeah, with drinking a cider or a pint or whatever it is you wish. So it'll be so much fun. But those guys, the board, the regular guys, the ones that bring their kids, all of them, the kids, they know more about these players, I think, than some of us do. And these kids, I'm talking like 5- and 6-year-old kids.
Great.
They're yelling their names when they get on the ball. They're telling them what to do, and it's really cool to watch. And we actually had a really fun moment today in the pub where it was a pretty good handful of Everton supporters in there, and they had that miss. It had to be around the 66th or 68th minute where it looked like the ball could have gone in.
Oh, Coleman. Yeah.
Yes, Coleman's shit. Well, this guy jumps up and he's like, yes! And then the ball goes wide. And then all of us, all 35 of us or so, jump up and go, yay! And he sat right back down. And he was sitting with another supporter, so it was definitely, we had a good time in there today. So it was, I got to give a shout out to those guys. Those are my boys, and our president, director of all things Dallas Spurs, Simon, who will be on the show with us if all things work out next week.
Yes.
So it's going to be good. Having a nice English accent on the show, I think that'll give a little bit of credibility to us two knuckleheads that are just here sitting behind microphones thinking that we know what we're talking about anything.
He's great. I am in such awe of what you and Simon and Kieran and those guys have done. It's really great, and I'm so excited because there's actually a week that I actually might even be able to make both fixtures. Saturday I'll definitely make, and hopefully make Wednesday as well.
So Simon, you want to talk about a wealth of knowledge. When I talk to people like you and people that have been supporters for 30 years, Simon, this guy is like a trivia book of Spurs. He's a human encyclopedia. So it's going to be really fun to have him on the show and have him be able to hopefully be on a lot more than just the one time, especially when we have former players on and some of these people that have also a wealth of knowledge, and he can probably spark a few light bulbs on in some of these ex-players and things that they have probably forgotten about that happened in their career.
He's great. Hey, does he have a nickname?
Simon?
Yeah.
On Twitter, you mean, or
no? Just in general. I just figured he'd be like Doddy.
I don't know.
All right, he does now.
Doughty?
All right,
Okay,
yeah.
there you go.
Shout out for Doughty.
Shout out for Doughty. And Paxton Coetzee, my buddy down in New Zealand. He runs Spurs New Zealand, so if you guys are not following them, please do. But he always is one that will come back and retweet our tweets, give some insight on our tweets, a little bit of a second view. Young man down in New Zealand, so I wanted to give him a little bit of a shout too.
Very gracious guy, isn't he? He's very
gracious and very much a Spurs fan through and through.
Yeah. Seems to be incredibly well respected by the experts, if you will, the M&Os. So.
And just of course Julie Welsh and Daniel